Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we continue to follow the love story filled with trials and hardships of Hung and Hoai Ca, a story that is not only about romantic feelings, but also woven with pain, waiting, and a son's deep longing to be reunited with his mother. At this moment, Hung's mother is still missing. That prolonged silence feels like a festering wound in his heart, making each passing day heavier than the last. No phone calls, no clear traces, only worry and unease surrounding Hung, driving him into a seemingly hopeless search, even though deep down he still believes that his mother is alive. In the previous episode, just as Hung was on the verge of despair after searching everywhere, asking questions, and following even the smallest clues, only to reach dead ends, far away, his mother's fate was taking a completely different turn. In Dong Dai village, a remote and impoverished rural area, she was struggling for her life each day in the humble home of a kind-hearted elderly woman. No one knew who she was or where she came from. They only saw a middle-aged woman, badly injured and covered in bruises, brought back barely alive after being brutally beaten by loan sharks because she could no longer repay her debts. The poor old woman, despite her own difficult circumstances, could not bring herself to abandon the stranger. She took her in, cared for her meals and medicine day by day, patiently waiting for life to return. And when Hung's mother finally regained consciousness, what shocked everyone was that she had completely lost her memory. She did not remember who she was, did not remember her past, and did not know that somewhere out there, a son was desperately searching for her day and night with all the love and hope he had left. In that poor little house, Hung's mother lived as an entirely different person. Each day passed as a series of unfamiliar moments, where she clung only to the old woman's care as her sole support. The memories that once made up an entire lifetime had vanished, leaving behind a cold emptiness that even she herself could not name. Meanwhile, on the other side, Hung had no idea that his mother had been hovering between life and death, only to be quietly saved. He continued tirelessly following old leads, trying to piece together scattered fragments of information. Then, a discovery left him unable to stay still. The last person to have seen his mother before she disappeared was the very man Hung had previously apprehended, the same man who had once been hired to harm Hoai Ca. That coincidence could not be accidental. Hung's instincts told him that his mother's disappearance was far from a simple accident or ordinary misfortune. Memories of the past, of the threats against Hoai Ca, of the shadowy connections with criminal groups, slowly surfaced in his mind like an incomplete yet deeply suspicious picture. Even though he had reported everything to the authorities, Hung refused to stop. He understood that if he only waited, he might lose his mother once again. Caught in a whirlwind of anxiety and determination, Hung had to protect Hoai Ca while continuing his quiet search. Hoai Ca, though always by his side offering encouragement, could not hide her unease as she realized that everything was gradually moving beyond their imagination. Yet it was precisely that love and companionship that helped Hung stand firm, refusing to collapse during long nights of despair. The reunion between mother and son seemed so close, separated only by stolen memories and secrets yet to be revealed. But the greatest question still remained: when memories are lost, will a mother's heart be strong enough to recognize the child she once loved more than her own life? And will Hung reach his mother in time before all traces are swept away once again? Everything still lies ahead, waiting to be uncovered in the chapters to come. The next morning, while the sky was still veiled in a thin layer of mist and the roads remained untouched by footsteps, Hung and Hoai Ca woke up very early. Without saying a word, both of them could clearly feel the weight of time pressing down on their shoulders. Every passing minute could mean missing an important clue, or, just as easily, taking one step closer to the truth they had been searching for so desperately. In the look they exchanged before setting out, there was worry, there was faith, and above all, a determination that would not allow either of them to stop. After a brief but carefully considered discussion, they decided to split up and continue the search separately. Each went in a different direction, carrying the same hope that the scattered pieces of fate would eventually come together. Hung understood that relying on a single path might cause them to overlook something crucial. Hoai Ca, with her sensitivity and intuition, believed that crowded places, where everyday stories were shared and remembered, might hide fragments of memory others had unconsciously kept. Hoai Ca headed to the markets, where life began at dawn and older people often gathered to buy, sell, talk, and exchange bits of their daily lives. She wove her way through narrow paths, stopping at street stalls, vegetable stands, and fish counters still damp with morning dew. Each time she asked, she carefully described an older woman, thin, badly injured, her body marked with bruises, eyes tired yet gentle. At times, she caught thoughtful looks, as if someone were trying to recall something. Hope would flicker in her heart, only to fade again at the sight of regretful headshakes and vague answers. Still, Hoai Ca refused to lose heart. Every step she took was slow but steady. She knew that if even one person she met had once seen Hung's mother, if even a fleeting memory could be stirred, it might be enough to change the course of their entire journey. Amid the morning calls of vendors and the familiar sounds of the rural market, Hoai Ca quietly gathered every small hope, refusing to let any of them slip away. Meanwhile, Hung returned to the old routes, the roads he had traveled countless times throughout his search for his mother. Every bend, every tree, every roadside tea stall reminded him of exhausting days when he had never given up. He stopped at small shops, asked water sellers, spoke with elderly motorbike taxi drivers who often rested beneath familiar trees. Some looked at him with sympathy, as if accustomed to the image of a son endlessly searching for his mother. Others simply shook their heads, saying they had not noticed or could not remember. Still, Hung persisted, refusing to overlook even the smallest detail. He understood that sometimes the truth did not lie in grand revelations, but hid within trivial stories, seemingly unimportant memories of passers-by. Every answer, even a denial, helped him rule out a possibility and move closer to the final answer. Fatigue gradually showed on Hung's face, yet his eyes never lost their resolve. At the same time, in Dong Dai village, the morning passed with a rare sense of calm. Gentle sunlight filtered through the old wooden window, falling across the face of the woman sitting propped up by the bed. Hung's mother's health had begun to improve. She was no longer delirious, her breathing steadier, and her frail hands could now support her as she sat up. Though still weak, her life was no longer as fragile as it had been in the early days. Her eyes remained distant and vacant, as if gazing toward a place deep within memories she could not reach. Yet the constant panic had begun to fade, replaced by a quiet, indescribable stillness. The elderly woman sat beside her, silently observing every small movement, relieved that the stranger had survived, yet worried, knowing the future remained uncertain. After much hesitation, the old woman gently suggested that the injured woman go to the police station to report what had happened. Perhaps, she said, somewhere there was a family desperately searching. Perhaps one report would begin to bring clarity. The simple words made the woman flinch. In that brief moment, her heart beat faster, an unease spreading through her chest. Though she could not remember her past, deep in her subconscious she sensed an unnamed fear. She feared buried memories suddenly returning, feared those who had once harmed her might trace her whereabouts. And above all, she feared that reuniting with family might bring danger to them. These feelings tangled together, leaving her unable to respond immediately. She remained silent for a long time, her hands unconsciously gripping the edge of her clothing, as if clinging to the only support she had. She could not explain why she felt so afraid, only that every thought of leaving the small house made her heart feel unbearably heavy. Seeing her hesitation, the old woman did not press further. She only sighed softly, eyes filled with concern, knowing that some fears could not be dispelled with a few words. Back on Hung's side, as the sun climbed higher, a small but unexpected detail emerged, like a sudden beam of light cutting through the fog. While stopping at an old roadside tea stall, Hung was told by the vendor that a few days earlier she had seen an older woman, badly injured, being supported by another elderly woman. They had walked slowly, extremely weak, taking each step with visible effort, before turning toward Dong Dai village. The account struck Hung like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, all his exhaustion seemed to vanish. His heart pounded, his breathing quickened, as if the intuition he had held onto for so long had finally been confirmed. The name, Dong Dai village, made him freeze for a moment, followed immediately by a surge of hope and fear crashing over him at once. He hurriedly asked for every detail, the time, the direction, the woman's appearance, even the smallest expressions the vendor could remember. Each detail strengthened his belief that this clue might be exactly what he had been searching for all along. Without further hesitation, Hung followed the directions, asking the way to the small village called Dong Dai. Along the road, countless thoughts collided in his mind, the hope of seeing his mother again, the fear that it might all be a painful coincidence, and the dread of facing the truth if she truly no longer remembered him. But no matter what, Hung knew he could not turn back. If his mother was really there, even if it was only the faintest possibility, he had to see it through to the end. In two different places, these people were unknowingly moving closer to one another than ever before. On one side was a son following the smallest traces with a faith that had never gone out. On the other was a mother still alive, but robbed of her memories, standing before a choice she herself could not fully understand. Everything seemed to be quietly leading them toward a pivotal moment, where fate was preparing to bring them together, though no one yet knew what would happen next. When Hung and Hoai Ca arrived at Dong Dai village, the afternoon was already fading. The narrow dirt road leading into the village was unusually quiet, lined on both sides with old trees standing motionless in the light breeze. Every step Hung took felt unbearably heavy, as if he were walking along a fragile boundary between hope and fear. Following the directions given by the villagers, they stopped in front of a simple house, its walls worn and stained by time, its tiled roof darkened with age. This was where the elderly woman lived, and also where his mother had been sheltered all these days. Hung stood silently at the doorway for a long time. His heart pounded erratically, his breathing growing shallow. Countless images of his mother flooded his mind, her familiar voice, her gentle eyes, the hand that used to hold his when he was a child. He had imagined this moment countless times, the moment of seeing his mother again after endless days of desperate searching. But as his hand lightly touched the old wooden door, a vague fear surged within him, as if he sensed that things would not unfold the way he had hoped. The door slowly opened. Standing before Hung was a thin, weary-looking woman, her face deeply marked by pain and time. She looked at him, but her eyes were completely unfamiliar. There was no shock, no emotion, not even a flicker of recognition. Only a cautious, slightly confused gaze, as if she were facing a stranger who had suddenly appeared at her door. In that instant, everything inside Hung collapsed. He stood frozen, unable to move. All the words he had prepared caught in his throat. Mom, the familiar call would not come out, because he was afraid that even a single sound might frighten the woman before him. He did not dare step closer, only stood there with trembling hands hanging at his sides, his eyes fixed on the face he had searched for all this time. Hoai Ca stood behind him, witnessing everything, her own heart tightening painfully. She understood that this was the moment Hung had both longed for and feared the most, a reunion without tears of joy, without a loving call, only a heavy silence enveloping them all. The elderly woman stepped out from inside the house and hurriedly explained when she saw the shock on Hung's face. In a slow, weary voice, she recounted the entire story, she had found the woman brutally beaten, her body covered in injuries, lying unconscious for days. When she woke up, she remembered nothing about herself, not who she was, not where she came from. Her memory was like a blank page, leaving only a vague fear and profound weakness, both physical and emotional. Even now, though her health had improved somewhat, she was still very fragile and could not withstand any shock. Each word the old woman spoke felt like a knife cutting into Hung's heart. He lowered his head, his hands clenched so tightly they trembled. The pain was not only from his mother failing to recognize him, but also from the overwhelming guilt that surged within him. He blamed himself for not finding her sooner, for letting her endure so much suffering alone. His mother was right there before him, only a few steps away, yet he could not hold her, could not take her home, could not even call her by that sacred name. Hung looked at the woman once more. She had already turned away, quietly sitting down on an old wooden chair by the porch, her eyes drifting towards some distant, undefined place. The sight pierced his heart. The search that had seemed to reach its end had, in truth, led him to an even more difficult trial. He had found his mother, but he could not bring her home, could not restore her memories, and could not erase the wounds she had suffered. In that silent moment, Hung understood that his journey was far from over. It had only entered a new stage, one where he would have to learn how to stay close to his mother, how to protect her, even when she did not know who he was. After regaining his composure, Hung sat down with Hoai Ca to speak carefully with the elderly woman and the local authorities. All opinions ultimately pointed to a difficult truth. In her current condition, it was not safe to take Hung's mother away from this place. Her memory was still a blank void, her health had only just begun to recover, and her mental state remained extremely fragile. Even a sudden change could send her into panic, or cause her condition to worsen. The local authorities advised Hung to be patient and allow her to remain in this familiar home for a while longer, until her health stabilized and there were signs of her memory returning, before considering the next steps. That decision felt like a knife cutting deep into Hung's heart. He had traveled countless roads, endured endless sleepless nights, and finally found his mother. Yet now, standing right in front of her, he could not take her home, could not protect her in the way a son had always dreamed of. Still, reason forced him to accept it. Staying here, beside the kind old woman and in a place she had grown accustomed to, was likely the safest option for his mother at this moment. Hung stepped closer to his mother and slowly sat down in front of her. He said nothing, only gently took hold of her thin, calloused hand, marked by months of hardship. It was colder than he had expected, so fragile that even the slightest squeeze made him afraid of hurting her. He held her hand for a long time, as if trying to memorize every line, every trace of warmth that remained. Though the woman before him did not know who he was, did not understand why a stranger was holding her hand, in that moment her heart suddenly trembled. A vague sense of familiarity crept into her chest. Whether it was memory, or merely the instinctive reflex of a mother's bond, her fingers slowly tightened in response, returning the warmth she felt. She looked up at Hung. Her eyes were still unfamiliar, yet deep within them flickered a hint of confusion, a subtle wavering that could not be named. That fleeting moment nearly broke Hung. He quickly turned away, afraid that if he stayed even 1 second longer, he would no longer have the strength to leave. Hoai Ca stood nearby, silently witnessing everything. She understood Hung's pain more than anyone, yet she also knew this was the only choice for now. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a quiet reminder that he was not alone on this journey. No matter how long or uncertain the road ahead might be, they would continue walking it together. When everything had been arranged, Hung slowly stood up. He bowed to the elderly woman, entrusting his mother to her with all his gratitude and trust. Then he turned back to look at his mother one last time. She had already faced the porch, her eyes quietly fixed on the empty space ahead, as if unconsciously searching for something. That image burned itself into Hung's memory, becoming a lingering ache he could never erase. The episode closes as Hung steps out of the small house in the fading afternoon light. The last rays of the sun bathed the dirt road leading out of the village in gold, stretching his solitary shadow across the silent space. He slows his steps, then suddenly turns back for one more look. The small house remains there, quiet and humble, but to Hung, it holds his entire world. His eyes are filled with both hope and helplessness, hope that one day his mother will remember everything, and helplessness because, for now, he still cannot take her away. The search has finally led Hung to his mother. But the true journey, the journey to bring her home, to restore her lost memories, and to confront those who pushed her into tragedy, has only just begun. Will her memories return? And how will the mastermind behind all this suffering be exposed? Stay tuned for the next episode.
Chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Chỗ mình là đang lạnh quá. Chồng ơi, chồng dậy chồng nấu đi, vợ sắp xong hết rồi. Chồng sáng đi là vừa. Chồng biết mấy giờ không? Hôm nào vợ chồng mình cũng ăn muộn hết.
Mì cho nấu cơm đúng không?
Vợ cắm rồi. Lúc nãy vợ đi tắm, vợ cắm rồi mà. Vợ tắm trước khi vợ cắm, vợ cắm trước khi vợ tắm rồi. Tạm biệt mọi người nha.